Sometime in the 2020s, two geeks from across social media formed an alliance to bring you geek news from across the Nostalgiaverse. They are Jacob's Toys and Super Sorrow. So strap yourselves in for the weekly live show that brings you toy news, TV and movie reviews, special guests, opinions, tangents, and bad impressions. Reveals, releases, thoughts, and maybe dreams. So prepare yourselves for the Geek Week in Review. Live.
Hello and welcome to the Geek Week, episode 149, with me, Jacob's Toys, and of course, the wonderful one and only Super Sorrel. This week we are talking about the 90s. Thank you very much for tuning in. Let's do the quick little bit that we always do. If you're watching live, join in with the comments. We're going out across a bunch of different platforms, so wherever it is that you're watching, doesn't matter, just join in with the comments. We'll do our best to throw them up on the screen. If you're watching us on catch-up, like we know a lot of you do, Sorrel, what is it they need to put in the chat?
Hashtag catch-up crew!
Oh, I like that. Well, look at that. You're down with the kids. Hashtag.
Mate, do you know what I've been watching this week, mate? I've been watching The Circle, so I'm kind of like, all about it. So, hashtag mind-blown emoji.
Okay, we're going to get a lot of, visual visual...
Exactly, mate.
Here. That's cool. There's loads of people in the chat already. Let's just give a couple of shout-outs. Emma O'Neill. Hello, Super Sorrel. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good.
Ezra, Gantos, Todd World, Sean the Sheep, Luna Spring, my favourite online persona name. He's in the chat. Hi, how's it going? Started with a click. Shelley is there. Andy Roberts is there. We've got Bethany Beth in the chat. We've also got Figure Fan 36. Let's go. Addy H is in the chat as well. Andy Roberts just said, how's it all going? For the love of the 90s, this is going to be a good show tonight. Yes, we are hoping so. We are going to talk about computer games, toys, television, movies. We're going to go deep dive on the 90s stuff. But before we do need to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's happened in the week. There's been a couple of drops. There's been a couple of things announced. Have you picked up anything? Have you got any pickups this week?
Yeah, but I think before we do that, do we not need to bring in the other person who's sat in the wings waiting to come in tonight?
Hang on, we've got a guest?
Yeah, man. We didn't tell anyone. It was super secret and last minute, but, we've got a dude.
Well, I'm going to... Let's do it proper 90s style and see if the modem's working, if the dial-up's actually working, and we can actually bring the guest in. No, the modem is not... The dial-up is not working. Let's start with the pickups, and then we'll see if the modem picks up. Joby One's in the chat as well. Tac Tac Toys as well. Tac Tac Toys, we're going to talk about this in a second. That's fair enough. Hang on, let me just... Hang on, no, the modem's connecting. Hang on. Ryan Speaks Geek is back! We got Ryan in for a 90s show. How you doing, Ryan?
Yeah, good, guys, yeah?
Yeah, good, man.
Very good, man. Good to have you back on a Geek Week. It's been a while.
It has been a while, and it feels like only yesterday. Except for now, I've got a different background.
My background's changed. It's all good. It's all good. Andy Roberts straight in the chat. Yes, Ryan. Fire emoji. What's the fire emoji thing? Bethany Beth's losing it. Oh my god! Click Ryan. Yeah, well, we couldn't do a 90 show without asking Ryan to join us because let's be honest, it's Ryan. Andy H.
The 90s.
Watching numbers just dropped.
Oh, I've really missed that so much.
But no, we couldn't do a 90s theme show without reaching out to Ryan and going, you know what, Ryan, you're free tonight. Do you want to jump on board? Because you're pretty much still stuck in the 90s. So it's all good. It's all good.
No, I'm not.
I think out of all of us, I think he's the one that's closest to the 90s as well.
Hey, I was born in 1990 and I lived in those glorious 10 years.
Fair enough. Let's talk quick pickups. Let's talk pickups.
Yeah.
What did you get, Sorrel?
Oh, yeah, because you didn't get anything this week. Did you not get anything at all? Other than you...
I got my Transformer, my fan home. I got a bunch of those, but there's not really anything I can show because it's all away in the cabinet. But yeah, I've got some of those that kept me busy this week.
So I got a couple of DVD pickups. Night Swim, got that finally. I've not seen that yet. And Baghead, just the name alone made me laugh. Baghead.
Yeah.
But my favourite thing of the week was going to the comic book store because, as you know, my comic book pulls are mental and wild because I don't do superheroes anymore. I do mental random stuff. So Creature of the Black Lagoon is back in a comic book. The Return of the Creature.
No.
You know, there's Emerald City. The Fall of Emerald City. You gotta like your booby comics. Elvira talking to boobies. Cinderella. That's Cinderella Murder for All Seasons. She's a bit like Deadpool in the comics. It's a bit mental. But my favourite one of the week, guys. My favourite one of the week, which I think it's perfect that Ryan's here for this one. Pooh versus Bambi.
Wow.
And this time, it's personal.
The Pooniverse is in the comics already.
Wow.
Look at that. Look at that.
I love that he's got a leather jacket going on.
I love it so much. The only reason I found this, by the way,
Bambi's mother.
the only reason I found this, by the way, is because some troll on the internet went, look, Super Sorrel's got a comic book.
Wow. Wow. Bethany Beth said, love the Cap Ryan. Figure Fan 36 got some pickups. Awesome figs from Smiths today. Let us know in the chat what you got. While we're waiting to Figure Fan, never thought I'd see Pooh with a gun.
And Shelley's Wizard of Oz Pops finally arrived. Finally. That's why I don't pre-order.
And I've
Mankind have had
dived
them for weeks.
Dived into the Masters of the Universe rabbit hole. Well, on the Masters of the Universe rabbit hole, let's just jump slightly over to, before we hit into the 90s, let's stay in the 80s, right, with Masters of the Universe. Because, as who was it that mentioned? There we go. Tac Tac Toys said Mondo 6-inch Ghostbusters announcement. Yeah. So for anyone that isn't familiar, I don't know if we've got a picture for this, Sorrow, or not, but Mondo did do their convention. There's stuff on my Instagram if you want to have a look at it, but they did their convention stuff. And they announced that they're doing 1/6 scale Thundercats, which is very cool. Very, very cool indeed. Not a huge amount given about what's going on, but they are definitely doing 1/6 scale Thundercats, which I'm really happy about because I've wanted Thundercats in my collection for a while, and now that I've moved to the 1/6 scale kind of era, they're going to fit in really nicely. So I can't wait to see more about that. But what they also dropped during their presentation is that they were going along. Oh, look, we got.
Am I a bit late now? There you go.
We got some pictures.
They're the pictures that they dropped. And
that's very cool. That's very cool. And then that's the kind of image going around on social media. But during their presentation, and you can have a look at the presentation on online, they were showing some things at the end and basically just talking about some reveals and stuff like that. And they clicked a button and it put up a picture of the real Ghostbusters with Janine, Slimer, and all 4 of the Ghostbusters. And they played along with the whole, why are they in that? Why is that in there? Quick, let's move to the next slide. Everyone went mental. And then they basically said, wait for us and wait for San Diego Comic-Con, and there'll be a little bit more explained there. Oh, look, is that my Instagram? You got my Instagram.
Yeah.
However, these mock-ups, these fan art concept were mocked up by an ex-sculptor from Mondo that did these a while back. So these aren't like official images of what to expect, but they're a very good indication of what we could probably come to expect. Yeah. So they're doing real Ghostbusters. They're going to be 6.5-inch tall, so they're going to fit in nicely with anyone that collects Legends scale figures or DC Multiverse scale figures. They're going to sit kind of nicely in the middle of those. And they're real Ghostbuster figures at the end of the day, and they are going to be awesome looking. Let's be honest, if anyone's going to do them justice, I mean, Diamond Select did a damn good job of them a few years back, but they are so hard to get hold of. They are like unicorn poop. and Mondo are going to do him justice. Let's be perfectly honest. And I, for one, am really, really excited about it. Really, really excited about it. While we're on that, though, quick trivia question for you guys.
Ooh.
Right?
Go on, then.
So, Tac said there, how about these Mondo 6-inch Ghostbuster announcements? However, the picture of the Ghostbusters that went up on the screen, what was that called?
Extreme Ghostbusters.
Real Ghostbusters.
Real Ghostbusters.
All right.
Do you guys know why the cartoon was called The Real Ghostbusters?
Yes.
Nope.
Do you know? Do you actually know? Not many people know this. And it's
If
my
it's
nice
the reason
little-
I'm thinking of, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I can
Go
think
on.
of two explanations.
Go on.
One, there was a Ghostbusters cartoon including a gorilla at one point, and so because of copyright reasons, they couldn't be called the Ghostbusters because the Ghostbusters were this weird, wacky thing. The other reason why it kind of works as a bolt-on to the trivia is because in the Real Ghostbusters cartoon, in the early episodes, they all come out of the cinema having just seen the Ghostbusters movie, and the guy who plays Peter Venkman makes a joke about the fact that they can't believe they got Bill Murray to play him. And fun fact, the guy who voiced Peter Venkman in the Real Ghostbusters voiced Garfield, which Bill Murray, who played Peter Venkman, then later went on to voice.
Yeah.
And thus, circle is complete.
But it was. The funny thing is what's his name? I forgot his name. Who's Winston in the films?
Winston Zeddemore is
No.
Michael Winston. No,
Something like that, innit?
no, Michael Winslow's Police Academy. I got that completely wrong. Ernie Hudson.
Yeah, Ernie Hudson. So he actually went forward for the voice of Winston in the Real Ghostbusters and didn't get it, which is absolutely mad. But yes, the first thing you said there is what's correct. So basically, there was another cartoon out at the time that was basically a group of paranormal investigators that drove around in a car with a giant gorilla called something like Johnny the Gorilla or something like that, or Eddie the Gorilla. And it was called Ghostbusters. It was a Film Nation cartoon that lasted for like a year. I think it was like 86 to 87. And
it had toys.
Peter Cullen, funnily enough, the voice of Optimus Prime, was a voice actor in this Ghostbusters cartoon, right? So it was a big deal at the time, but obviously it came out just before Ghostbusters became a cartoon, became an animation. So when that came out, they had to bolt something on to separate it and basically just called it The Real Ghostbusters, which is throwing shade, let's be honest. It's like, I see your Ghostbusters cartoon, but we're going to call ours The Real Ghostbusters. So yeah, there you go, a little bit of...
And when we get to the 90s, we'll make them extreme.
Yeah, that's what everything in the 90s was extreme, let's be honest. Talking in the 90s, shall we move on to our subject matter of the night? Let's jump straight in. The 90s. The you know what's most scary about the 90s?
It doesn't feel that long ago, but it really was.
Yeah,
It's come back, and it's now come back around. All the kids think it's cool.
I know that my kids think the 90s is cool, and I'm like, what? This was like 90s was like a couple of weeks ago. it's like I'm sure I've got a letter here dated the 90s. But
I had to explain to someone at work the other day what the save icon was and then I had to explain what a floppy disk was, and you can see where this rabbit hole went.
Oh, insane, isn't it? Insane. I was explaining to my kids that back in the 90s, I had to my computer studies, my IT lessons were basically how to save onto a floppy disk and how to position your hands on a keyboard so you can effectively reach the keys. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah.
When we did IT, it was like, can you open a Word document? Well done, class. That's great. Now can you turn off the computer, because that's all we can do.
Yeah. But yeah, so the 90s.
Have you ever heard of Star Wipe?
Can you... So this, see if you remember this one. Can you fix the contrast by twiddling the thing at the back of the monitor because it's got a stick in the back of it? Do you remember those monitors?
That's
Jesus.
Although you couldn't unplug them very well because obviously you had the plug and it had two screws on the back. It was like they were that paranoid that people were going to walk around yanking cables out the back of the screen. Now they just like go for it, HDMI, wireless, whatever. But back in the day, that was a fear. That was a real fear that required screws.
We had to be careful. Cable management was a big thing in the 90s. man, we need to do a show on the 80s because I need to talk to Spectrum and Commodores where we used to put our cassettes in to load our games up. And we were like, yeah, we want to play that game. I'm going to load it up and come back in 40 minutes when it's ready. But anyway, sticking on the 90s. So yeah, it was like 30 odd years ago. And I think before we get into the nostalgia of it and before we kind of start talking about like all the really good things about the 90s, as somebody that was born in the 80s and kind of grew up in the 90s, it makes me really sad that a lot of stuff nowadays is being questioned and kind of like Saved by the Bell, for example, for me was a religious watch. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
But there are whole websites and YouTube channels and stuff that are dedicated to how bad Saved by the Bell is in regards to like different types of shaming and different types of like, you know, and it was like, whoa, it was just the 90s. That's how it was. Like that's how school was in the 90s. Like they're not making it up for fun. Like that's how it was. Like, you know, so but
it's a reflection of the times, and I think there's always a danger with stuff like that because even if it's like for example, like it's not 90s, but Carry On films, people say that they definitely shouldn't be on TV anymore and that, but it's a really big part of history. And if you watch something knowing what the context is, like Aladdin now has a warning message at the front of it, like Disney's Aladdin. Realistically, that's not the one that should have a warning message. But, you know, the anime one had a warning message. And it's like, I kind of feel like I get it. And maybe that's the better way to do it. Is just have a message, just say, like, it was the 90s. You know, this is what we did. Rather than going, pull it, destroy it, remove it from history.
Well, it's like originally the Beast had a tattoo on his arm. The Beast had a tattoo, and then they digitally removed it in future. And I think it was even when it got released to DVD in the 2000s that they digitally changed it. But back in the 90s version on VHS, the Beast had a tattoo on his arm, and Disney got rid of that. So I mean, it's insane what gets changed over the years.
Well, us tattooed guys are thugs. You know that.
I mean, Aladdin, they had to change the lyrics to the opening song.
Yes, they did.
That's the famous one, isn't it?
But the funny thing is, as well, is that like, okay, like Beth said there, like 90s music is amazing. What really upsets me is that generations now are kind of like going, right, well, you know that by forgotten era there, the 90s from like 30 years ago. I really like that piece of music, and I really like that particular style of clothing, and I'm going to bring those back. But everything else, we're gonna shame,
pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and it's kind of like you got to take the salt with the pepper. Do you know what I mean? Like you got to take the good with the bad. Like it's.
Do you remember when? Do you remember when?
You like my 90s reference? Salt and Pepper was 90s, yeah. Was it? Oh.
Do you remember when Friends was brought back onto Netflix and the amount of shade that got when they brought Friends back because of the out of date jokes and things like that? It's like, but that was genuinely humor of the time. Yeah. And obviously, it's like looking back. It's like looking back at the 70s when you're a 90s kid, and you would cringe and you think, "Oh my god, can they really get away with saying that?" And now you look at our childhood and people are going, "Oh my god, can they say that?" It's just one of them things, isn't it? It's as time moves on and things change.
See, my eldest daughter absolutely loves Friends, and she watches it religiously because it's on Netflix. Absolutely loves it, but watches it as an old program. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. There's also a documentary on it's either Netflix or Sky or Prime or one of those about the Nickelodeon shows and stuff.
Oh, I've seen it. Oh my god, I've seen it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, whoa, yeah. It's
quite
dark.
on set.
The 90s was dark. The 90s was dark at times. Let's be perfectly honest with you. But that is not what we're about today. We're about going down that memory lane and that nostalgic kind of trip. Now, obviously, we're the Geek Week, so we love the music, we love the fashion, all that kind of stuff that comes with the 90s. But we want to talk about the computer games, the toys, the televisions, the movies, all those kind of things. That
the
kind
inflatable chairs, the inflatable photo frame, Oh, wait, we're not talking about the inflatables.
Mate, I had an inflatable chair. I actually had one.
Mate, I had inflatable chairs in my first when I moved into my first house. I had an inflatable chair and an inflatable armchair because it was cheaper to buy them from Argos than it was to buy a chair. So it's
special buy 2-pack.
I think it was actually. I really think it was, and it was
it
was like a matte black. And I was like,
one thing I'm really
to my house and think I'm cool. They didn't. They just came and thought I was poor.
One thing I'm really glad about, though, is that we didn't include music in these categories because I think you guys would have been heavily disappointed in my 90s tunes. I was a very young '90s kid. Bear in mind, I was a little bit younger than yourself, Jacob. 1 year older than Ryan. I was born '89. So I mean, I grew up on Bewitched and Spice Girls. You know what I'm saying? And Boyzone.
No, see,
Yeah.
my 90s music. My 90s music was twisted. I tried compiling a playlist of stuff that I listened to throughout the 90s, and it goes like everywhere from like Skunk and Nancy to like Spice Girls. It's like weird. Like I went through some weird changes.
It wasn't until my cousin gave me the Toxicity album from System of a Down. I don't know when that. I don't know what year that was, but that was when like I was introduced to like proper music.
Shall I tell you what? While we are talking about music,
I'm looking when that was now.
Music on the 90s, right? What was really
2001. Oh my god! Sorry.
What was really beautiful about the music of the 90s, like late 90s in particular, was it was at the time when, obviously, like CDs were like big, so we were moving over from cassette tapes to CDs, and then towards the end of the 90s, early kind of 2000s, we moved on to mini discs for a little while. Do you remember mini discs?
Oh,
Yeah, you could boom boom boom. If you do not know that reference, that I could actually still sing that whole song for you right now. The lyrics are just like in my head.
What about I'm the DEVIL, the devil?
No.
No? Clubland? No? No, okay.
Coolio's Gangster's Paradise. Yeah, JB1. But talking of music, right, what was really beautiful was that because it was CDs, a lot was shared. So like things were ripped and things were passed around, and the kind of piracy element of it was kind of a free-for-all. Do you know what I mean? It was like you could go and buy a stack of kind of blank discs in like Argos or Woolworths or whatever, and just burn your discs and give them out to your mates, and no one really cared, and it was kind of all okay. But because of that, you ended up with albums that you would never necessarily purchase yourself.
Yeah.
And so I was introduced to things like Green Day and Offspring and stuff like that I never would have actually kind of come across naturally, but was introduced because someone was like, oh, look, here's a copy of Dookie. And I was like, oh, okay. And that became like my Bible for like a year. You know what I mean? Like, so it was things like that I think was really, and it's kind of a lost thing now.
The effort you used to put into one, recording songs off the radio and getting it just right onto cassette, but also some of my mates had CDs and some, it was that weird transition time between tape and CD. So I used to have blank tapes, and I used to borrow mates' CDs and record onto cassette, because I had the most 90s of sound systems. I had a giant Coca-Cola can where the front opened, the ring pull was where the disc was, and it had the tape player and the radio in it.
Yep.
And if you put the CD in, you could record onto the cassette. And I spent a lot of time curating that and writing in the tiniest micro handwriting on the labels of the cassette, like, or sitting there reading the cassette lyrics. When you had the little pamphlets that used to fold out. It seemed like honestly, it was like the Marauders map. It just kept going and going and going.
My favourite was though that I'd get given an album on CD, and it was kind of like, this is by Blackstreet, for example. Like, do you remember the Blackstreet album in No Dig? So I got given that and knew every song on there, word for word. Albeit the words weren't correct because I didn't have an internet to go and Google the lyrics. So it was kind of like whatever I thought the words were to the song was what I was writing down and learning. But because it wasn't my album, I kind of designed an album cover for it. And then when I kind of later on found out that it was called this and it looked like that, I was like, oh, it's not quite as good as I imagined, or like this is a lot better than what I drew. Like,
has this group never heard of clip art? Like, what's going on?
Clip
no,
art.
I'm talking.
Jesus.
Ryan, you know me better than that. It was hand drawn.
It was hand drawn near you, isn't it?
Yeah, it was hand drawn. I got my pens out and my pencil. But yeah, so there we go. Anyway, let's move on.
What about?
Music.
Oh,
go on.
I'm gonna say two. If we're about music of the 90s, I've just got to say two words: Chef Aid, the South Park album.
Oh wow! Very good, very good.
Why do you stop dressing me up like a mailman and making me dance for you?
That is a scarily good impression. And can we have a thing where we do a special episode where Ash just talks like the whole time in a red jumper and a beanie hat?
Don't, because people have asked me to do that on the internet, but I've been told that I could break the internet by doing the voice with the frigging costume on.
I
there
can
we
see
go.
a new Super Sorrow special.
But you see, you're sending me off on a spot. Do you remember Scatman John? Do you remember that?
Mm-mm.
Do you remember? No one knew what he said, but it was
No.
like up there for like weeks in the
I might
chart.
have misheard the lyrics, but I'm pretty sure he was declaring that he was in fact a scat man.
Yeah, and his name was John.
Mm.
So, yeah. But yeah, it's just what I really enjoy at the moment as well with my eldest two that are kind of like, they're in the early teens age now. That with Alexa and stuff, I will go, right, Alexa, play this, and this, and I'll kind of load up like 3 or 4 songs from when I was like their age that I used to listen to, and it was like real hit miss. Like they'll go, oh, this is brilliant. Yeah, what's this one called? And then something else will come up. Alexa, skip. Like, so it is fun. It is fun, kind of going back. But yeah.
Alexa, stop listening. Please don't do that. That came out of my headset, and you made Alexa go boop. Alexa, stop listening. I've just said her name again. Come on, stop it.
Right, that is the
Alexa, play Boom
90s
Boom Boom.
That is the least 90s thing ever. That during a live stream
I know. It's because I've got this
podcast,
on. It's really high. I've gone quite loud. I'm deaf as a post.
Doing a
And your
90s
voice then
show.
came out of it.
you're doing a
The only thing I was
90s
missing
show.
was him taking his VR goggles off.
a live video podcast, and I activated your voice activated smart speaker.
You did.
Hey guys,
Through
remember
the
the 90s
internet.
when Alexa was just a name?
Right, let's move on. Let's talk. What should we do first? Do you want to do TV, movies, computer games, toys? Where should we go?
Games.
Oh, games. See, games is a difficult one with games because
There's so many good ones.
But the thing you've got to remember about the 90s when it comes to computer games is it was that transition period between kind of 2D and 3D graphics. So
Yep.
we had the like the
Sonic the Hedgehog type stuff, and then you had Crash Bandicoot in the same era where you had from
But
one
not-
to the other.
Not even that as well. You had your real-time strategies, your first-person shooters. Like all of those games kind of were
Platformers.
born in the 90s. So you went from a real kind of, because even the Crash Bandicoot and that, it still followed the same principle of your Sonics and your Mario and stuff like that, where it was kind of like you start here, you end here, and you jump over and under these things. And they switched it into 3D, but at the same token, we had these kind of first-person shooters. We had these kind of these click and what are they called? What were the
Point-and-click.
games called? The click and point games, where you kind of like click the mouse over in this direction and the character would
Yes.
walk over there. Yeah, so things like that. So I really struggled because straight away I was kind of like, oh, okay, well it's like your Sonic 3, your Mario 64, all that kind of stuff. And then I was like, oh no, hang on, I need to dive deeper. But yeah, so I think my choices might be very different to yours. So I'm going to go
Are
second.
we doing
or last.
5?
Yeah.
5.
Oh, that makes it a little bit easier for me, slightly.
You can do some honourable mentions if you need to.
Thank God. So an hour of honourable mentions and then my top 5. Got it.
Yeah.
So are we going to go round robin style? We're going to go with like number 5, and then we all say his number 5.
Oh, I didn't do them in order.
Oh, did you not do them in a ranked order? Okay, never mind then. We'll just go. We'll just.
Why
we'll
not in
just talk.
order? I've just selected some.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go first. I don't mind. So I have put mine in order. So my least favorite one of the 90s up to my first. You ready? So GoldenEye N64 comes in at number 5 for me.
Yeah, I missed it.
The Secret of Monkey Island.
Oh, LucasArts.
Oh yeah. Duke Nukem 3D.
I'm all about
Yep.
bubblegum.
Day of the Tentacle. That is one of my favorite games of all time. I love that thing.
Wow.
No,
I
you've
had
hit
forgotten
2
that.
of mine. You've hit 2 of mine.
And then the game that I played the most in the 90s, and I racked up so many goddamn hours on with all my friends, Pokemon Red. Because I had the red version.
Game Boy. Damn it.
Yeah, we had Game Boy there as well. So I think I did a good coverage of console and game and PC there.
Interesting. Go on, Ryan.
Oh. Okay, I was sort of debating mine. So mine are a proper mix. So the first one shouldn't be a surprise based on my T-shirt. It's still Streets of Rage 2, which has still
Nice.
got the sticker my mum put on when I traded it with Michael Dagnall in primary school to make sure that we knew it was mine.
That was a thing as well. That was
Putting
a
your
thing.
name on stuff.
Parents labeling your stuff for when you got a trade.
Sweet
Oh,
manuals.
look at the manual.
Still works.
That is a bigger manual than you get with most like
It is,
appliances now.
isn't it?
Like
Yeah,
that
it
is
really is.
like I
But
was
now we get a
fitting.
QR code.
Listen, I was fitting white goods on Friday into a kitchen, and the combined manuals of the white goods that we fitted were not as thick as that manual for Streets of Rage 2.
You know why? Because this has got a backstory and it's all in the book. So yeah, Streets of Rage 2, particularly the second one, I think it's one of the best games ever made. It's my favourite beat 'em up. Crash Bandicoot 2 and Spyro 2 I've linked together because I think they are sort of intrinsically connected and they are brilliant. Like the first 3D platformers. Age of Empires 2 for Windows.
Yeah.
My favourite Star Wars game of the 90s was Shadows of the Empire
Nice.
on N64. Still mint in box. I play it. But you said about Game Boy now, and I'm like, oh. But I'll give it to actually because it was the main spot I was given to Small Soldier on PS1, which sounds nuts, but it was. I can very
remember that.
clearly remember going into Curry's because Comets and Curry's used to always be next to each other in Chelmsford.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into Curry's and they had the PS1 set up, and I had only been playing Mega Drive at that point. And then suddenly I went up to the demo thing and there were Small Soldiers playing, and it was the first ever 3D game that I was running around a room. And it was this film that I absolutely adored, and it had this huge. And today the score of it is still very impressive because it's done by a full like Welsh orchestra. It's insane. So it gets that spot, and it's not even a particularly great game. It's a very good look. It's got a terrible shadow box, but it was just the experience of going like I've been playing Sonic, Streets of Rage, Road Rash 2 is probably the most 3D game I've been playing on the Mega Drive, and then suddenly here it was. I was running around a room, and enemies were shooting at me from all over the place, and it was just like as a kid, it was just like mind blowing. And my other last honourable mention before moving over to our good friend in the other box, Jacob's Toys, is Medieval. Because where I discovered my love of all things Halloweeny and Nightmare Before Christmassy,
Amazing.
and it was just beautiful colours. And the thing is, I didn't actually play the full game until probably about 15 years ago, because my version that I played to death was on the demo disc that came with the console, Demo 1. In the little red envelope. So I played the same 2 levels, PC, because I couldn't get it anywhere. Like Electronics Boutique didn't have it. Electronics Exchange didn't have it. So I just played my demo disc over and over again. In fact, I actually once made my parents get Domino's twice in 2 weeks because they were giving out 2 different demo discs. Not Domino's, Pizza Hut, sorry. They were giving out demo discs with the pizzas.
Yeah, that was a thing. That was a thing. Wow. See, for me,
So
like I thought a lot about console games because I loved my Nintendo 64, I loved my Mega Drive, my Mega CD. There was some real kind of honourable mentions on there. Things like Lethal Enforcers, where we got that on the Mega CD, and it came with the big arcade guns, the big pink and blue gun, and you felt like you were in an arcade game. Like how it worked, I have no idea.
I'm about to say, to this day, I don't know how that works. It's like, how did that?
How, Ryan?
So,
enlighten me.
There's a reason why. If you got your new TV, you hooked all that up to your new TV, it wouldn't work. It's because now it's all digital. However, original CRT TVs have the thin layer of glass. And what it is, it's to do with light refraction and back. That's why you have the little glass in the gum, the little curved glass in the TV. So that's why I've kept my CRT TV, and I will use it for Time Crisis 2, Shotgun, Machine Gun, Handgun.
I just like, because I was thinking about that the other day, and I was like, when all the things like the Wii came out, and what was the Xbox Kinetics or Kinects or whatever it's called came out, all that kind of, and you had all these things you had to attach to your TV and put around your room and all this kind of stuff, and like the PlayStation, you had the wands with the big balls, and then. Whereas back in the day, Mega CD, you put the disc in, you pointed the gun at the telly, it was like you were away. There was games like that, and I thought a lot about my console games, but there wasn't a huge amount that I could kind of put up there and kind of go, these were my definitive games.
Mm.
I loved games like Lemmings and Worms. Do you remember Worms?
Mm-hmm.
I love those kind of games. Yeah, they were brilliant. But for me, I went much more down the line of the computer games, like the actual
PC.
computer game, the PC games, because for me it was kind of like that felt like a progression in the 90s. It felt like, I'd played computer games late 80s into the early 90s. Towards the later 90s I was kind of like playing grown-up games, and there was something really beautiful as well about the big boxes that they came in. Do you remember the big cardboard boxes? And they'll just be like
Unnecessarily big.
no, there'll be like a disc and an instruction manual flapping around in this massive cardboard box. So for me, Monkey Island was on there for me. That was an absolute blast of a game. And Day of the Tentacle was on there. Day of the Tentacle.
Yes.
If you've not played Day of the Tentacle, play it. It is this bizarre, mind-bending, like kind of time travel, spacey, wacy, like
Mate, I still know Day of the Tentacle off by heart to this day.
yeah. It's
Laverne, how'd you get upstairs? Am I upstairs? I got lost. Have you seen a tentacle? What's a tentacle? Oh, something I whipped up in the lab, frankly. I remember that stupid game off by heart.
But off the back of those, a couple of honourable mentions. So that was a LucasArts game.
It was.
And I went down a whole rabbit hole of LucasArts because they did a whole thing called white label games. So they were like cheaper, but not hugely cheaper, but they were in like a big box that was all white with a small picture of the
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so off the back of that, Grim Fandango. Do you remember Grim Fandango?
Yeah.
That was one of them. There was a motorcycle one as well, which I think was called Full Throttle. I
Yep,
think it was
Full
called
Throttle.
but you were basically a motorcycle gang.
Biker.
Sam and Max.
Yep, Sam and Max through
Sam
time.
and That was it.
Police. Also
and
great
then-
cartoon.
Monkey Island was another white label that I had. Console wise, I spent an entire summer playing with my friend Resident Evil 2. So I can't not put Resident Evil 2 on there. Resident Evil 2 changed my direction when it came to kind of jump scares and all the rest of it. And even though the graphics are incredibly dated, it was still one of the jumpiest games that I'd ever played. Alone in the Dark on the console. Do you remember the Alone in the Dark game?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now they
wow.
progressed and they got better and better, but the original Alone in the Dark games were so blocky and so crap, but so terrifying. Like so terrifying. So yeah, Alone in the Dark was up there. But there is, when I actually think about it, there's one game that stands out above all of them, and it is the forgotten story of a very well-known character that everyone knows, and it was Indiana Jones: Fate of Atlantis.
Oh,
Was
God.
my
Oh, I'm
game.
playing that at the moment.
You really? That was my
Yeah.
game.
It was on
Was that a
Steam on
LucasArts one as
sale.
well, wasn't it? No? Was that a LucasArts
Yeah.
one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was as good as one of the movies. Like the story in it was phenomenal, and it was like a computer version of a film. The graphics didn't live up to it, but it was just that point and click and kind of like, oh, you have to take this rug and then travel halfway across the world and give that to somebody because then they're going to use that to catch a monkey, and then like because
I'm
bought the
actually
monkey-
currently trying to scare a snake, working out what I need to scare a snake out of the way so Indy can follow the path.
Isn't it the fire? I'm sure you need fire on that bit.
Oh, I may have to go back to the temple.
I think it's
Sorry,
fire.
this is turned into an old game helpline. I remember you used to call those in the back of magazines. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know how to get through here.
But off the back of
Right
that,
choice.
what I will say on games before we move off from games, do you remember Games Master on the telly?
Yep.
Whatever happened to those? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
YouTube.
show.
This.
YouTube, yeah, became gaming, didn't it?
but it was kind of like you would sit down, you would watch like an hour or half hour, or whatever, of them literally kids in a studio playing a game, and the kids weren't interested in talking to the presenter. They was like, "What are you playing? Grim Fandango? Is it good? Yeah, it's on the PC. Whatever you want. Go away, please. I'm nearly done." That's how it worked.
And they had Jet from
Starting
Lightning
to
on as the game mistress or whatever she were called.
That's
Do you
it.
remember that?
Click Shelley, Cannon Fodder, and James Pond. James Pond 2, Robocod. That was that was a good play on words. Good play on words. But yeah, there we go. So there he is. Is that Robocod?
James Bond
It
too.
is.
Electronic Arts. There we go.
Wow.
Do you know what? And I didn't have to pay for any extra content either. There's no microtransactions. It's just the game.
Yep, it's just there. It's just there. So there we go. There we go.
I love my little Mega
Andy
Drive
Gruber,
collection. It's just to hand.
Bad Influence. That was also a very good game program as well. Cool. Oh, I'm really surprised though that a lot of ours crossed over there. I did not think anyone was going to say Day of the Tentacle. Did not think that.
Love Data
I had
Technical.
forgotten about it until you guys said about it. Like, it was like it was all purple with the green little suckers on it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like, I totally pushed that out of my brain.
Because it was one of the first games that had voices. Like the opening cutscene and about 3 of the cutscenes in the game actually had voices originally, which was like unheard of back then.
Just before we do move on from games, you just opened a new memory as well. Toonstruck, starring Christopher Lloyd,
Yes.
Wow.
was very much along the lines of Day of the Tentacle, but it was like a weird game version of Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
And it was
has some
him.
live action scenes.
Yeah, there was live action in it, and you basically had like Christopher Lloyd as a computer character, and it was really weird, but a very good game. Sorry, but yeah, there we go. There we go. Right, what next? TV or movie?
TV.
So we're gonna go with movies.
Go on,
TV,
then.
go on.
Go on, then. TV. Which way round we going?
I don't mind going first again.
Go on,
So mine this is in no particular order, but Erie, try again. Erie, Indiana.
Fuck's sake. I'm going. I'm just.
Goosebumps. Power Rangers. Keenan and Kel. And the Batman animated series.
Put the screw
In the tuna. I remember that so vividly. Welcome to Good Burger, Homer. The Good Burger can't take your order.
Are they making a sequel now? They're
Already
making,
made it. It's
They've already
out.
made Good Burger too. Yeah, it's out.
Is it any
Like
good? Has anyone seen
recently?
it?
What? Sorry.
Is it any good?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I reckon they'll do a Keenan and Kel too. I really do. I reckon they'll do like a grown-up Keenan and Kel.
I hope
You
so.
reckon?
It'd be too obvious not to do it after the success of Good Burger 2 as well, because it was received really quite well, wasn't it? So yeah, they'd be daft not to.
Wow.
The problem is when we do a 90s show, something like this, it just makes me want to spend the next 5 days just living
Binge watching.
in the 90s. Binge watching, binge playing, binge reading.
Now I put Batman animated series on my list because obviously that was the introduction of Harley Quinn for me as well, which is like one of my favorite characters of all time. But does anybody remember the Warner Brothers shops?
Yes.
And you would go into the Warner Brothers store, and in the one I went to in Sheffield, they had the Batmobile, and you would basically get in the Batmobile, put like 50p in, and it would play an episode of the animated series.
Oh, our one didn't have that. 'Cause we had one at Lakeside, Jake.
Lakeside was the closest to me, yeah.
And you would
Yeah.
basically sit inside. You like shut the door at the side, like the big, and you'd sit inside the Batmobile and watch an episode of the TV series.
That's
that was like
actually
my
how
favourite
I
thing.
want to watch it now.
It was the Sub-Zero episode. No, sorry, not Sub-Zero. Mr. Freeze episode. The one at the zoo.
Yes.
It was that one they were playing. It was like that on repeat,
What a great
basically.
episode.
Every time you put 50p in, it just came back on.
The store at Lakeside was literally like a Disney store, like with all the stuff off
Yeah,
the
mine was.
ceiling. And,
Yeah.
yeah, it was an incredible. Like, it
The
was
teddy
my
bear bit
favorite.
in the middle.
Yes, my favorite part of going to Lakeside as a kid was to just go into the Warner Brothers store.
And they had like they had a big Bugs Bunny in like a tuxedo at the front to have your photo taken with.
Yeah, that's it. All the big things.
With your disposable camera.
Yeah, with your disposable camera back then. Jesus.
Wow. Go on, then, Ryan.
Oh. X-Men still is very hard to beat. Goosebumps was one of mine.
Yeah.
And Goosebumps, X-Men 97, by the way, absolute fire. So fucking good.
So good.
So yeah, Goosebumps. Oh, God, it is a tough one. really liked the Sonic cartoons. There were two concurrently going at the same time. With Lil White with the voice, Urkel from Did I do that? He was the voice. Gargoyles.
Good shout.
When I first saw that, because I got the first 5 episodes were done as like a movie, and I remember getting that from Blockbuster Video and being just like blown away. I thought it was the absolute coolest thing I had ever seen. It's hard. The problem is, if I could lump some together, the 1 or 2 seasons of like Bucky O'Hare, Toxic Crusaders,
Yep.
Biker Mice from Mars. I think cartoons were mainly. I think Power Rangers was an obsession. I still love that, and VR Troopers and Master Rider, and Big Bad Beetleborgs. But we just had so many good cartoons in the 90s. The things about 90s cartoons, well, some of them felt like spiritual successors to ones that were big in the 80s. You know, like your Ninja Turtles and Toxic Crusaders were blatantly like Ninja Turtles, sort of move like progressions. But you also had all the stuff re-aired from the 80s in the 90s. So you watched like, Transformers, guys, stuff we watched, like you almost probably watched some of it twice, because like you would have reruns of Ninja Turtles and Transformers the cartoon, stuff like that, Mask, Mask Crusaders.
I really struggled with this as a list because of that exact reason. Because I looked at things like Ninja Turtles and I thought, well, that was my 90s cartoon watching. But then I was like, because I remember being a certain age and doing certain things and watching it. And I was like, well, no, actually, but I also previously watched it when it originally came out in the late 80s. So I was kind of like, well, I can't put that in my 90s because I watched it as a rewatch. I can't have that in my 90s list. But you're right. The successors to the 80s cartoons and the shows that they were releasing to compete with those reruns were massive.
Street Sharks, need I say more?
Yeah. So my list for that is X-Men the animated series and Spider-Man the animated series. Those two, hands down, as two inclusions, but two of my favorite cartoons of the 90s, without a doubt. Erie, Indiana was up there for me as well.
Yeah.
Again, I can't believe that you hit that. I thought that was going to be a real fun, like, sideways one.
Mate, it's got Omri Katz in it, man. I'm a Hocus Pocus geek. As soon as I saw him on Fox Kids, I was like, "What's this? What is this?"
What though? That as a cartoon, as a television show, like, was messed up. Like it was scary. And I think back, and I'm just kind of like, if that was on telly now, I would kind of go, "Oh, is this right for my kids to watch?" Like, you know. But at the time, yeah, go for it.
I didn't want to get braces as a kid because of one episode of Erie, Indiana.
Yeah. You
know exactly which one I mean.
I know exactly which one you're talking about. But as a sideways twist, because you mentioned Erie, Indiana, there was another show called Round the Twist.
Oh yeah.
Remember that?
Round the Twist.
I don't remember that.
Have you ever felt like this? You not remember that?
Round the Twist.
And they lived in the lighthouse. But strange things happen.
Very weird, Joe.
Around the twist. Yeah. There was an episode of that called Little Black Balls, where basically one of the goats just pooed loads, and it's on repeat in my Anyway, so Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, I have to put that down. There's no two ways about that. That had to go down. I watched that massively. Are You Afraid of the Dark on Nickelodeon?
Oh,
Can't not give that some kind of props there. But then there were also other shows as well that kind of got honourable mentions. So things like Gargoyles, Street Sharks, Dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, the Dinosaurs was a big one. Traumatized
Amazing.
a lot of us with that season finale episode, even though we all knew it was coming, like emotional damage. But because of being a bit of an artist and everything like that, I loved the shows like Art Attack that was out there. And I just don't think we have YouTube tutorials and stuff like that, but there was something really pure about tuning in and watching something as a show and just kind of going, oh, I need to collect 1,700 toilet rolls because I'm going to make a Colosseum. Like, you know what I mean?
Because Neil Buchanan comes out in his red sweater. Yeah.
Neil Buchanan has told me that if I collect like 1,500 toilet rolls and some pipe cleaners, I could basically make a go-kart. And it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, go for
I remember the one where he did the salt. He was in a big black room and he just had salt.
He just
Like,
poured
it
it
must
out,
have been yeah. And when I think about it now, that must have been like £600 worth of salt. Like there's a
Yeah.
Tesco somewhere that basically had no salt for 3 months because Neil Buchanan had gone in just to draw a rabbit from a great distance in salt. And you're like, brilliant.
Yep.
You know the white horse. You know the famous chalk thing on the.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first thing when we saw that when I was a kid was like, oh, it's like Neil Buchanan did with the, an heart attack. And my dad was like, Ryan, this is definitely quite a bit older than heart attack.
The heart attack.
But you know-
Standing in front of it, this is heart attack.
Do you know what I miss about 90s TV though?
Go on, Em.
The mascots.
Mm.
So Zig and Zag, you know, I think, and like I remember I was lucky enough to have Sky as a kid. So I mean, we had Sky One, and on a Saturday morning it would be DJ Cat.
Yes.
Do anyone remember DJ Cat?
Yeah.
But yeah, I just no one has mascots in this day and age. No one has puppets anymore, and I just really miss it.
What I will say though, because you mentioned Sky there, is that what my next point to 90s TV was going to be was that towards the later 90s, that's when we got Sky TV, which was still like when it came out, but I was a little bit older, and Cartoon Network blew my mind.
Fox Kids.
Johnny
That's another
Bravo was the best television show ever. Dexter's
Dude.
Laboratory, like all of those
Get
kind of
yourself
things.
to Primark at the moment for no discernible reason. They've got Johnny Bravo t-shirts.
Perfect.
I can't work out why. It's not popular
so-
again. It's not re-airing. It's just
No.
there. It was £8. I've never been so happy to be excited about something that no one around me knew what the hell I was talking about. I was like, it's Johnny Bravo.
Shall I tell you what?
Oh,
Though?
wow.
Well, Johnny Bravo is so sexist. Like the,
Oh, yeah.
hey, pretty lady. It's just like it was just so. How anyone thought that was a good idea to put on television? But I thought it was
But he
amazing.
always lost and got beaten up though. So I guess the message is right, because if you act like that, you're always going to be dumped or let down or hurt or beaten up, because he never won. He never got the girl.
And
It was
you know
like
what-
it was like somebody took like Arnold Schwarzenegger and crossed it with Jim Carrey, and then you get Johnny Bravo.
But what's
Dwayne
really
Johnson
funny,
was meant to play him in the live action movie, by the way.
Oh
At one point.
Christ Almighty!
But right back when he was the actor, Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Yeah.
He was cast as Johnny Bravo, but eventually the project collapsed. But he was cast as a live action one.
Shall I tell you what's really funny though? If you actually look at it as an adult, he never got the girl. The only person that thought he was cool was himself, and he lived at home with his mum still. And that was when you actually look at it and you kind of go, when you're a kid watching it, you'll go, man, that guy is cool. But when you're an adult looking at him, you're going, man, that guy has gone nowhere. Like, he's like, and his best friend was like a little girl, which is weird. Like,
The neighbour.
Yeah.
But do you remember where all that group of cartoons came from? Because like when Cartoon Network first came on, they didn't just make Johnny Bravo. There was a segment of cartoons, and it was called literally Cartoons.
Yes.
And it would be a 30-minute segment of shorts. Yeah.
Yep.
And that introduced the world to Dexter's Laboratory, Cow and Chicken, Courage the Cowardly Dog, I Am Weasel. Yeah, I Am Weasel. Powerpuff Girls, Johnny Bravo. There were so many that came out of that. Invader Zim, I think, came out of that as well. There was just so many. Mojo Yo-Yo.
And then they just, they made them into fully fledged cartoons, didn't they? So, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
All right, then, where are we going? Toys or movies?
I think toys, then we leave
Can I
movies for
just-
the big finale.
Can I show you one little thing on the note of Power Rangers that I just quickly went and got? So do you
Yeah.
remember when cereal used to be cool and you used to get free stuff in cereal?
Oh, that's another 90s thing.
This
Wow.
Where's mine?
is my magic Power Ranger card. So if I open up this way, here he is, it's Tommy. Wait, if I open it that way, it's the Green Ranger.
Wow. That's top secret, Ryan. Don't show it on air. It says top secret.
I mean, he's just...
Shreddies cannot trust you with anything.
I know. Do you know what? They've never sent me anything since. No, I've kept that. That's genuinely my one I got out of the cereal box as a kid. I could never bring myself to part because Green Ranger, Tommy's my favourite.
Shall I tell you what? There was so much in cereal when it came to, like, like my kids don't love cereal as much as I loved cereal when I was their age because of the toys. Like, let's be perfectly honest with you.
And the lack of
Kids
sugar.
and the lack of sugar, yeah, and like E numbers and stuff. But even so, right, there was something about cereal because of, I would eat certain cereals because, like Boglins. Do you remember Boglins?
Boglins,
It's
yeah.
another 90s toy. It's not on my list. Oh, I'm gonna have to put Boglins on my list. But there was like a whole range of Boglins that came in the cereal that you couldn't get in the shops. That they were, and there was a series. It was like kind of like 5 or 6 different designs that you had to basically just go to the store, buy it. It was blind bag on a whole nother level because not only did you go to the store and pick up a blind bag, you had to eat like 300 grams or whatever it was of food to see if you had the blind bag. And if you got a double, you had to just go back to the store and get another box and do that again. So, yeah. My parents used to get really angry at me, though, because I'd always take the bag out, shuffle it around, push the toy to the top, pull I got the toy again. Oh, it's me again. Yeah. Cheating.
See, I never had that trouble. My brother was 8 years younger than me, so when the 90s were a thing, I was the only one eating cereal. It didn't even exist till 98. Yes.
Yeah. Take that, brother.
Take that, Jamie.
Dude got a hell of a lot of toys.
Yeah. All right, let's talk toys then. While we're on toys.
Yeah. Okay, I don't mind going first again if you want. Toys for me of the 90s. God. So, Wrestlers in My Pocket. Speaking of cereal toys. And I even have the vivid memory. I even have the vivid memory of my nana cutting out a coupon in the Daily Mail so that I could go to W.H. Smith's with $1.99 or wherever it was to get like it was the Wrestlers in My Pocket first aid set. It was like a dude that were passed out and like a doctor had like 1,000 hands or something daft.
Yeah.
It was insane. The Pokédex, the original Pokédex that came out in the 90s, it was like a little red, about this big, and it literally had every Pokemon in it as well, which was awesome. Pogs.
All 151.
Yeah. Pogs. Who remembers Pogs?
I do.
Little circle discs.
I had a Pog Maker.
Oh, wow.
You had that?
Yeah,
I
man.
always wanted that. Always
man.
wanted that.
Basically, any bit of random crap, Christmas paper, magazine cutouts, all the rest of it. I ended up using like porno that I found in a bush and making like booby box. Mate, they trading them at school. Safe to say I got used my booby pogs. But it was it was weird. It was basically just a card and a sticker, and it kind of like stuck it all together. It was basically just a big hole punch. That was what it was. But yeah. And I remember it. I vividly remember it. Like you had to push it down and twist it, and it made that noise where it kind of stuck it together. But yeah.
Then I had Street Sharks on my list as well.
Yeah.
And then these ones are, again, this is so like back in the day. I love this so much. You know the Living Dead dolls that we all know and love today?
Mm-hmm.
Well, back in the 90s, they had the coffin dolls. They were just called by then. They weren't even called Living Dead dolls when they first came out. They were called coffin dolls, and they were literally, they came in like a little coffin, and they had a noose around the neck with a keychain attached to the other end of it. So you could basically hang them from your belt, and they were hanging themselves. And I had the evil nun one, and there was like a Lizzie Bowden. You could buy Lizzie. And all the ones that Mezco are now doing as a part of the Return of the Living Dead dolls, they were all featured in the original lineup of these horrible little things. And they had proper nooses around the neck, which is like so like you won't get away with that now.
No.
Jesus, wow.
What's really cool about the 90s toys as well, and this was definitely more 90s, because when it came to toys, the 80s was where the kind of the birth of the rise of the action figure, the rise of the collectible kind of turn the card around, here's all the figures you can get. And then the 90s just kind of ran with it, like massively ran with it. And anything that they could put on a card back and sell as part of a set, you got. And because of that, and we've mentioned this on previous shows, but because of that, you had all these forgotten toy lines that just basically were like a one series, one and done, and then disappeared. And I think it's when we had Empire Toys on, and I said something similar, that because of the way that it was in the 90s, of all these different toy lines, you could literally have a whole collection of toys with play sets and everything, and your best friend had never heard of them and had a whole collection of something different. And the crossover games were amazing. You do not get play times like you got in the 90s.
Agreed.
Just doesn't happen nowadays. Imaginative play is not the same because everyone has the same toys from the same stores.
And it's us.
And it's us. Yeah.
Is that your list? Ash, is that
Yeah, sorry, that's my list. I've just literally got this to show you. Hang on.
All right, I'm interested for your.
Here you go, Jacob.
Oh,
Sorry.
hang on, here's the coffin.
That was what I was referring to.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is horrible, innit? And I remember having that like hung in my room, and they had like little nooses around the necks and stuff, and they're just evil, horrible looking little things.
I kind of want them though.
And people wonder why I love horror so much as an adult.
Yeah. Just quickly, Bethany Beth said in the chat, I remember a toy store called Jolly the Giant Toy Store in Leeds. But independent toy stores, again, a thing of the 90s, that it was kind of like you would have these toy stores that would have like a whole line of figures that you would never see anywhere else. It'd be like, oh, you'd go on holiday somewhere or go and visit your cousin in like Scarborough or something like that. And they'd go, oh, we'll go down to the toy store and there'd be like some random toy there and you'd take it home and they'd be like, your mates would be like, what's this? Where did you get that? Oh, I went and visited my cousin in Scarborough and got it in a toy store. And then they would never find it anywhere else. And you would be like king because you would have this really random Toxic Crusader figure or something. But going on a tangent.
Love it. So my toy line. So
Oh god, I remember that star. Jesus Christ. Sorry, I've just googled Jolly the Giant 'cause obviously I'm in that neck of the woods. I've just googled it now. I remember the logo. Oh my god, I'm old.
Meanwhile, back in the 90s. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Aliens. 1992
on my
Kenner
list.
Aliens.
Kenner Aliens.
Or just Kenner in general in the 90s in regards to like that was
Everything.
a horribly violent and terrifying film. But now it's
Kenner.
for kids.
Kenner was king in the 90s, let's be perfectly honest.
100%. That toy line, because when you were a kid, all the creatures were instant bad guys for any other toy you had.
Mm-hmm.
Any alien you got was like, right, that's Biker Mice from Mars are going to beat that up now, or that's going to be a creature in Star Wars. That's going to be, a Ninja Turtles mutant. They could be anything. Like, because I hadn't seen the film at the age of like 8, so I just had this cool monster toy. That's what I saw them as. But they were semi-translucent as well, which was always really cool. Anything that glue in the dark or was semi-translucent as a kid, I was sold. Didn't matter what it was from. I was like, I want it.
I was the same with the Aliens. I hadn't seen the film either because I was even still too young at the time when the toys came out, and I only had one of them, but I remember the purple and green kind of card back, like it was phenomenal. And I think it was like Panther Alien or Lion Alien or something. And it was like a goldy orange color, and you could push it down and it kind of jumped or something along those lines. But yeah, amazing toy line.
By the way, this is Tizer, just in celebration of the 90s. I am drinking Tizer. They still make Tizer. It's good, but it doesn't have anywhere near the numbers of E that you used to have in it. My next toy line, I've brought a little example. Mighty Max.
Wow, I forgot about Mighty Max. Yeah.
The awesome toy line that had the teeny tiniest of figures, but all the play features and the things in the world. I like that this one even has like a little drawbridge thing that you can.
They all had like a function, didn't they? There was each one of them had something that was unique to it, like a bridge or a rope.
This one has the rope goes across, and the dragon comes all the way out.
The dragon.
But I just thought, like, my sister had Polly Pocket, I had Mighty Max.
Yeah.
Like, that's the way it went down. And the funny thing is, everyone started getting in on it because then you even had like this, like Power Ranger Morpher, that opened up to be a whole play set.
Wow.
It was just the idea that you could have not just the figures, you could have like a whole play set so small. And the artwork inside those Mighty Max sets is just phenomenal. And the cartoon was equally phenomenal. That should have been on my list, damn it. So Mighty Max is going to be on there.
I'm honestly really surprised that no company in this modern day world has basically made belt buckles from Mighty Max things.
Yes.
Who
They
were
had the
like
horror
they
heads,
would
which
sell,
were that
wouldn't they?
They had horror heads that were that big. So yeah, that was on my line. Galoob Z-Bots is a bit of an obscure line, but I've got quite a few of them, and I absolutely adore them. Just little robots about this big, but they had all crazy different things, and they all had like chainsaw arms and missile firing faces and stuff. Yeah, totally impractical for war, but they looked awesome.
Yep.
Power Rangers as a toy line, having the Megazords was just one of the coolest, and I've still got the original one up there. I just think they are the absolute coolest thing. The original Megazord and Dragonzord, just perfection itself. And probably the last one I'll mention for the 90s toy line, well, two actually, sorry, last two. Micro Machines in the 90s when they got the Star Wars license. So basically, I can basically encapsulate it in one thing: 90s Star Wars. 90s Star Wars toys were absolutely awesome and insane. Kenner started doing super beefcake versions of Luke, Lando. It was honestly, look at them; they look like He-Man, and they didn't. But they just released all the old vehicles from the Kenner line, and none of the figures fit in them because they were suddenly like beefcake. I mean, I can't do that. Surely our resident Cartman can do a better version of that.
Beefcake!
There it is. Yeah, all those figures. You know, they just Star Wars blew up again in the 90s. So, and then Galoob started doing the micro machines of Star Trek and Star Wars, and that was awesome because you could have like a whole fleet of ships. You know, I could have like loads of TIE fighters fighting loads of X-wings and the Enterprise at the same time, because you know, crossovers. But yeah, so I think that's my main list for what I absolutely sort of loved as a kid, and also Ertl Thomas the Tank Engine. It's now in your head for days.
It's it's the beginning. There's the boop, 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 boop. There's that, and then you wait for the drop. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, honestly.
Almost on going like over the top.
It's that is literally one of the like you get kind of like holding tones when you're phoning people up. Like if I shut off, that's what I hear in my head. Like I just hear that. Boop, 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 boop.
So many good remixes online with people.
Yeah. All right. So toys for me. Ironically, Aliens was up there for me. Aliens as a toy line was up there for me, and I didn't have a huge amount of them. I only had a couple, but they were still one of my favorites for the same reason that you mentioned, the playability and the crossovers and everything like that. Shelley has mentioned Boglins, did mention that already, but I'm not going to go on to that one. Uncanny X-Men figures. Do you remember those? The cardback thing. And you had the Sabretooth that had the constant like face, but he had like if you flicked his chest and it span round, and you had the Wolverine
claw
slash.
mark.
Yeah.
I always wanted the Sentinel from that line.
Yes, yeah. But each of the figures had something unique to them that represented their powers.
A Magneto that was basically a lighter.
Mate, 80s. See, that to me is a more of an 80s thing where you had the toys
Flick
that
things.
included like parts. Like, but anyway.
Caps in the back.
Cap. We'll get to that in a minute. That was the RoboCop toys. The RoboCop toys had the cap things in the back. On that note, the Terminator figures, more Terminator 2. It was the Terminator 2 toy line. Still to this day was one of my favorite toy lines. They were just so. I think that for some bizarre reason, it was a film that I was probably too young to watch, but my parents had let me watch, and I was obsessed with, like absolutely obsessed with. And the toy line just hit perfectly. So even though they didn't look anything like the characters on screen, let's be perfectly honest with you, like they didn't, like the T1000 didn't look anything like it, did it? But they had, I don't know if you remember this, but they had all the different toys. The motorbike was the go-to, but it was the lab set. Do you remember the
generator?
The flesh one, yeah.
Where you got the exoskeleton, and then you could peel it off. Mate, what happened to toys like that, where you would make a toy? Like, I know we have things like Beast Lab and that stuff for our kids now, where it's slime in bags and stuff like that. But this was just like you made the toys and you peeled the skin off and and all the rest of it. Don't get me started on 80s slime, but we'll talk about that in another one.
Infinitely better than modern day slime.
100%. It stained your hand for like a week. The next line, ironically, I know that you guys know that I started collecting again, but the Jurassic Park toys, I've finally got back into the... Have you seen these, Ryan?
Yes.
You've seen that I've got these, right? So I'm collecting back the Kenner just slowly, just very, very slowly, just starting to collect back the Kenner Jurassic Park line.
You'll have the compound in a month.
Yeah. But I think one of my favourites, so I've got Jurassic Park, X-Men, Aliens, Terminator, but one of my favourites, and I think I've mentioned it before, is a cartoon called Pirates of Darkwater.
Yeah.
And great toys.
Yeah, the toys were phenomenal. The cartoon was weird. You can pick them up really cheaply on eBay now. Like, they're not expensive, and I'm debating kind of getting a collection. But there was just something really wholesome about them. And I think that because my parents picked them up at a market or a boot sale or something like that, I felt like I just kind of had them all at once. It was like one Christmas or something. And basically my presents were all of these Pirates of Darkwater figures. And they were like, oh yeah, this is a cartoon on telly. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then I started watching it. I was like, we've got the toys. I might as well enjoy the cartoon. But yeah, that was mine. So, but for me, action figures and toys were much more 80s. And I really had to figure out what were 80s toys that crept into the 90s and what were 90s toys, because I think that for me, I was getting to the age where I didn't want to play with action figures as much as I really wanted to play with action figures, because it wasn't cool for my age. So things like the Power Ranger figures, I had a couple of them, like the flip head ones and stuff, but none of my friends did. So it was kind of like, well, I can't ask for these for Christmas because I'm too old now. I need to ask for a pair of jeans and some sunglasses. Do you know what I mean? So,
it's just sad. You get to a certain age, you just got to let the toys go, man. You know, you just can't just keep. You just can't keep playing with them at all.
Me and my brother the other year, when my mum asked me and my brother for at Christmas for a list that she could, to get us some stuff, and neither of us were like, no, mum, no, it's all right, you don't worry about it. And then Christmas Day came and she bought us both like a pair of joggy bottoms, some socks, and like a dressing gown. And me and my brother looked like we're like opening it all depressed, like, oh, it's Christmas. Where's the toys, mum?
Yeah.
To this day, my whole family still, when they go abroad, they find me because I love them, these really stupidly cheap Transformers, normally called like Transmorphers or like Reforming Robot Man. And my sister got me one recently, and it's a watch, definitely designed for a child. It does not fit on me. However, it's the worst watch ever, but it's actually quite a cool robot. And the funny thing is, I'm in my 30s. This has been going on for like 30 odd years. And I'm very glad it's still happening.
Yeah, man, hold on to that. It's one of the things that I massively regret the kind of I think that kids nowadays have got a really good opportunity where things are deemed as acceptable in that respect. Like, liking the things that like Pokemon is a great example, that you've got kids that liked it from when they were a kid all the way through to being adults and collectors of Pokemon, because it was acceptable to kind of stay in with that. Whereas kind of in the 90s, there was that real kind of transition where all of a sudden it wasn't cool. You had to let go of the kid stuff. And it makes me so sad that there was that kind of point where you had to pretend that you didn't like it, because if you liked toys and you liked action figures, you never stopped. You just pretended to your friends you didn't. And that's the really weird thing, is that looking back, we're all just sat around pretending that we didn't want to play with Power Ranger toys when really we all wanted to play with Power Ranger toys. But there we go. Before
we move on, just one last thing on toys. You said your screensaver of the mind is Thomas the Tank Engine. Boop, 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 boop. Do you want to know what mine is?
Yeah.
When I'm not thinking about anything else, when my mind goes blank, it's going, Mr. Frosty, he's such fun, he makes drinks for everyone. Pop the ice under his hat, turn the handle just like that, swirl in a flavor that you like, a delicious lollies. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's what happens in my mind. That's the entire song. Movies.
My one is first class windows. Don't deliberate. Chelmsford, 226688. First class, not the best. Call them up and you will see when you pay for your front, you get your back done free.
Yeah, man.
That's a local legend.
Yeah, we had up north. It was cold seal coming, cold seal coming, cold seal coming down your way.
Still here.
My God.
I just need to dial the modem up.
But yeah, let's move on to movies anyway, because we're running out of time, I think. But top 5 movies. My top 5 in no particular order. Bride of Chucky. Everyone knew that were going to be on there. Watched that far too young in life, to be fair. I think I was about 10 when I first watched that. Jurassic Park, the film that my parents took me to the cinema to see, aged about 3 or 4 and traumatized the crap out of me.
Brilliant.
That opening scene of shoot 'em, like, yeah, what's going on? Completely lost train of thought. The Mummy. Gotta love The Mummy. Again, I loved that film, but my mum. I remember mum being like, "Should he really be watching this?" And my dad's like, "Yeah, it's fine. It's like Indiana Jones." It's really not.
That's how it was marketed.
Yeah,
That was how it was marketed.
Hocus Pocus. Gotta love a bit of Hocus Pocus. My favourite film of the 90s, though, and it's still one of my favourite films to this day, Hook.
Ah.
Smee, why, now?
No, it's all about Rufio. Rufio! What? I mean, literally, I've said this before. I grew up and I wanted to be Rufio or David from the Lost Boys. That's where the spiky hair comes from. That's where the leather jackets come from. I wanted to be Rufio so bad.
You know what is beautiful about that film, though, and it's not on my list, but it is hands down one of my favourite all-time films. But what I think is so beautiful is that film is, as a kid, you watch it and you're like, Rufio is the GOAT. Like, he is the guy. I want to be Rufio.
Mm-hmm.
But then as you're an adult, and especially when you've got kids, you're like, Peter is amazing. Like, Robin Williams' portrayal in that as the kind of distant father and the forgotten Peter Pan and all that, like, it's just beautiful. And it's just one of the best films of all time. There's no two ways about it. There will
Fun
never
fact.
be... Gone.
George Lucas and Carrie Fisher are in that movie.
Yes. Yeah.
So is Glenn
Yeah.
Close.
So that's a couple.
Yeah.
Yes.
But as a remake or a reimagining of the Peter Pan story, I say it now, you can quote me on this in however many years, there will never be one as good as Hook.
No, never.
Ever.
I never saw it. See, that's funny because I never saw it as a reimagining. I saw it as a sequel to the Disney film. As a kid, in my mind, that was a sequel to Peter Pan.
Yeah. Well, when I say reimagining, I mean it's like reimagining
the story, the idea of the story.
Yeah. Just very, very quickly, Jenko T said in the chat, I don't care what any of you say, in the 90s, Batman and Robin was so good.
Yes.
In the 90s, Batman and Robin is still so good. Like,
yeah,
it is
I
a
will
classic.
defend that.
And Jenko said Jumanji as well should easily make any top 5. I think Jumanji gets up
Yeah,
there.
God, Jumanji. Jesus.
Without a doubt. Anything Robin
There's so
Williams,
many in there. Small Soldiers as well. That ain't even on my list, but yeah, that's another amazing movie.
Go on, Ryan, what's your 5 movies?
Do you know, because obviously, I don't know if anyone knew this. I got ambushed by the way, you need to pick 5 of these just as we were about to go live.
Yeah, but you're the only one with examples and props and it's like...
Because I'm never that far out of the 90s. I keep 90s close to my heart at all times. So some of the top movies, straight out of, as an adult, I love it so much. It's one of my favourite films. Is You've Got Mail. I love You've Got Mail, mate. I absolutely love a rom-com anyway, but it's all based around AOL chat rooms.
Yeah.
We're talking about the dial-up. It just made me think of it when you were joking about doing the dial-up bit. And I was just like, oh, You've Got Mail.
What's funny is that was supposed to be like a modern version of like Sleepless in Seattle, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's now really dated and out of date. It's like we need a modern version of You Got Mail.
It's timeless.
Yeah.
What we now is like You've Got TikTok, which would be like crap.
You've got instant message.
Yeah. You've got a tick on Tinder.
Thanks to Meg Ryan starring in your DMs.
Sliding in. You've got slides. I think 90s Disney as a whole is one that should be sort of just encapsulated and kept and protected forever.
Yep.
Lion King, Aladdin, just so many good, solid Disney animated films. Rescuers Down Under was one of my favorites. Obviously Jurassic Park, Terminator 2. I guess one of my personal favorites, obviously, is Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, which I'll be seeing at the cinema this Friday.
Yeah.
As a kid, I've never been more excited for something in my life. Blade.
There you go.
So Blade, I actually saw what the anniversary showing of that, which made me very depressing when I saw what the number anniversary was, in the cinema again recently. Whilst the CGI blood has not quite held up, the rest of the film, phenomenal.
Do you know there's a scene in that where they had to CGI his eyes open?
Really?
Yeah. Google Wesley Snipes Blade CGI eyes, and you can read the article. But basically, he refused to open his eyes to film a certain scene, and so they shot it and then just CGI'd the eyes.
That's the most Wesley Snipes things I've ever heard in my life.
I'm not doing it. Not doing it.
Not doing it.
You know what? Joby one's on point because Star Trek Generations. Because I grew up watching Star Trek with my dad. It was really like mine and my dad's thing to watch Star Trek. Star Trek Generations was awesome because it was like two different. It was the original series and Next Generation like combining, and seeing Will Shatner and Picard on the same screen was just phenomenal.
Which was the Star Trek film where where they had to sing a song to make Data stop trying to crash a ship or something? I've just got this vivid memory now of them all singing to Data. And it was like a really weird song, like hi, like Patrick Stewart starts singing it to Data, doesn't he?
Nemesis.
It's one of the movies. Nemesis.
Because it's Beta, he's singing it to try and unlock Data's memories. I love that I know that so in detail. There was one other film. It was a Tom Hanks one. It's not Toy Story because I include that in the Disney bundle. Forrest Gump.
Oh,
good shout.
January.
Very quickly, Northern Nomad said that social rumours say that Wesley Snipes is coming to the MCU. Who knows? That'd be cool. Right, my top 5 movies. So a couple of honourable mentions here.
Shot in the buttocks.
I put Highlander.
There could be only one.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether Highlander 1 was late 80s or early 90s, but there was definitely a few sequels. So I put Highlander as a 90s thing. Obviously, I have to put Lost Boys. I know that's like a late 80s film, but for me, it was I watched it in the 90s, so that's why it's an honourable mention. The Crow, Mars Attacks, Scream, like they were all big for me because I was kind of moving into that. I need to watch cool films now in the 90s. However, my top 5 did include Terminator 2. It was one of them films that I watched religiously. I had the special box set that my mum and dad bought me. It was like a tin that had a VHS of Terminator 1 and Terminator 2. And about a year after they bought it for me, I realised that the plastic came out and underneath it was this beautiful book of artwork and stuff from Terminator 2. But yeah, I destroyed those video cases. I think I still have that tin somewhere. I'm going to have to see if I can find it. Jurassic Park was definitely up there because... oh, look, there we go. Northern Nomad. Highlander was 86 and Lost Boys was 87. Okay, I'll take those off my list officially, but I watched them in the early 90s. So, yeah, there we go. Jurassic Park was up there for the same reasons that you said. Tremors. Do you remember Tremors?
Yeah.
Love Tremors.
Tremors had to be on there. It went off on one with the sequels, but that original Tremors where you had the graboids that were in the desert and a young Kevin Bacon like fighting them and stuff like that was 90s, wasn't it? That wasn't 80s.
Yeah, no, that was 90s.
That was 90s. Starship Troopers has to be up there because it was one that it was one of the only films that I literally watched every day. Like I could watch it every day and not get bored of it, just on repeat.
Would you like to know more?
It was nothing to do with the shower scenes at all. It was nothing to do with the shower scenes at all.
That the tape was degraded by the end.
It was just very fuzzy at that point. No, it was just one of them films that I could just watch on repeat over and over again.
again, I think it's really funny because, like, you mentioned Highlander and then you mentioned Starship Troopers. Obviously, like Clancy Brown being both an actor in both of those. But as a kid, you never saw the two as the same guy, did you? Like, as a kid, you wouldn't have known. Like, obviously, he's the villain in Highlander. He's Victor, isn't he? And then he plays the guy. He plays a sergeant in Starship Troopers. Put your hand on that wall.
Yeah.
It's like, as a kid, though, that never ever entered your mind that they're the same person.
Yeah. Started with Click. Shelley has mentioned one of my others that I was going to say was Independence Day. There's just something very cool about Independence Day. Independence Day / Men in Black, I said, because there was something very cool about Will Smith and aliens at the time. It just
And the
worked.
music video and the song all in one package of awesomeness.
Yeah. Which he recently redid at someone's concert. Have you seen that?
At Coachella.
Yeah. But my number one movie of the 90s, hands down, you should be able to say it because I tried to mention it in as many podcast episodes as I can, but it's Guy the Dark Hero.
Oh, I thought it was going to be Masters of the Universe.
No, Guy the Dark Hero. Jenko T, Wild Wild West. Wicked
Wild.
But no, Guy the Dark Hero was one of them films. It was like an adult version of Power Rangers, and I think having had the conversation with you guys tonight about sort of having to let go of Power Rangers at a certain time, I think that's why I latched on to Guyver so much, because it was like, but it's the same, but just with blood. So
Was it Mark Hamill in the first one?
Mark Hamill was in Mutronics, which was the first Guyver film. So the original name for it was called Mutronics, which was the villains in the film, but then they renamed it Guyver, and then Guyver Dark Hero was the follow-up. But yeah, that's my movies. But for me, it was all the sci-fi fantasy movies for me in the 90s. Yeah. Joby one, listen, anything with Will Smith, I could probably, I probably know, like, literally.
The good guys dressed in black. Remember that. It's in case we ever come face to face to make contact. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to do Wild Wild West.
Desperado, Rough Rider. No, you don't want none of this.
Shall I tell you why? Shall I tell you what's really cool? One of my favourite groups of like the late 90s, early 2000s was Drew Hill. And they did the How Deep Is Your Love, which was the Rush Hour main theme. And it was Drew Hill / Cisco that sung on Wild Wild West as well. They're the R&B group.
Who's the what soundtrack? Did you say Fast and Furious soundtrack?
No, Rush
Hour.
Oh, Rush Hour.
Yeah.
Rush Hour.
Family.
Yeah. But yeah, Drew Hill. And so it's Drew Hill and Will Smith. And that's why I loved that film so much, because I was like, yeah. Oh, let's see. Joby knows. Everyone knows. So too, Joby, like, there's so many Cisco songs, and I'm not talking about the
song.
Commercial-wise songs. No, see, that's Cisco. The Cisco when he was with Drew Hill before they really hit it big. Some of the songs there were amazing. But there we go. But yeah, there we go. So that's my kind of top five. But Guyver's up there. Guyver is definitely up there. But one more honourable mention that we have to mention because there's a remake coming out. But The Crow.
Yeah.
The Crow has to make up.
The remake is coming out.
It wasn't a film I watched in the 90s though. I didn't see that till a lot later because I remember when it would be like late about mid 2000s when I'd go uptown and I'd be able to afford like a VHS tape off the market and they'd be like £3 for a VHS or something daft. And I started picking up all the films of like the 80s and like early 90s on VHS, and that's when I saw The Crow. I didn't see it till a lot later, but it did heavily influence my teenage years of wanting a long leather jacket along with The Matrix. Can't lie.
Yes, I did that when I rented from, and Jake will remember this, it was Prime Video across from Zeus nightclub. I rented The Crow and I got ID'd for it, and I was like, I'm old enough. It's like, clearly was not old enough. Like a pen, like Sharpie beard. Yeah.
Yeah. No, The Crow for me was the late 90s film that I watched over and over again. And you know what? It was 30 odd years ago, so I'm seeing this remake as a reimagining, as a different version. As I'm trying not to look at them as two and the same.
Yeah,
I'll give it a watch, but I'm not like,
the same way that we're getting hyped about the Blair Witch remake because it's being remade for a new audience. this is how I'm looking at this. I'm like, you know what? If this crow can do what that crow did to these kids that they did to those kids back then.
Oh, I thought you meant kill an actor. I was about to say that's a bit dark, Jake. If the crow can do what?
Yeah.
No, he's referring to the kids like me that like raided their mother's eyeliner drawer to get the eyeliner to do the crow line. Thinking I'm a badass.
Yeah.
Like a reject Alice Cooper walking down the street.
No, this will probably just like inspire a TikTok dance or some crap like that. Crow, 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 crow.
There they go. So yeah, that's it. That's it. Cool. But the 90s, shall I tell you one thing going through all this, and you'll probably agree with me with this. There was so much to pick from. Like I thought it was going to be a real easy kind of, oh, it's this, and this. But there was so much to pick from that trying to get it even into all into one show is near impossible.
Would you like to
So
know
that
more?
means it's going to be a sequel.
Would you like to know more? That's a remake I would welcome. That really is a remake I'd welcome.
Not even a
We'll do another
remake,
one
just
too.
just like another film in the universe of. Like they don't need to remake it, but just make another film in that universe, isn't it? Just Starship Troopers on a different planet.
We
Shall I
should
tell you
do
what?
different sequels that exist.
I would like them to remake it only because any additional film that they've tried to make, they've tried
been
to
crap.
shoehorn Casper, whatever his name, into it, and Johnny Rico is like somehow connected. It's like, no, just reset, hit the reset
Yeah.
button, and just give us a new reimagining of it. Like, he doesn't need to be shoehorned into it. Like, let him go. Like,
Rico's
he was very
Roughnecks.
cool. He was very cool in the first one. Anything past that, it just kind of got a bit desperate.
That's the end of the 90s. Jake just brought the tone right
The
down.
19, there we go.
We'll be doing a sequel on one of this, obviously called like 90s 2 Electric Boogaloo. Surely that's going to be a thing.
The sequel to the 90s is the 2000s.
Oh god.
The noughties.
The noughties. Yeah. Weird time.
Actually, there was a lot of good stuff in the noughties. Actually, I'm
There was
saying that
actually
back.
a lot. Yeah, it was a lot of good
Yeah.
stuff.
We take that back.
Um,
Sorry, noughties.
But yeah, I don't know. I think we've covered quite a bit though, don't you?
We could go on, but
Is there any
we're
that
not
you
going
any
to.
bits that you've anything that you've thought of that you want to give a quick honourable mention to during the show, or have we? Do you think we've covered it all?
I think I've covered it as much as I can without going on for a very, very long time. I think if I mention anything else, I'll start going off on another tangent because you know me, I loves me a tangent. So
I think there was just like there was a couple of films that obviously were very. It sounds ridiculous now because they look so bad, but at the time, do you remember when like the Iron Giant came out and everything that came out around that, and like how people were like praising it because it was the best thing ever because it was the first time like a live actor had done screen capture or whatever. It was Vin Diesel, wasn't it? Yeah. And then obviously after that, then we had the Final Fantasy movie, the first full length CGI computer animated movie,
starring the very first completely digital actor.
Yeah, that's weird. But it's the weird thing now because obviously everything's CGI and animated, and it's just to think back that was like a new thing and we were all excited to see it. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Northern Nomad, Ryan. Oh no, not breakdancing.
There we go. Oh, so that kind of brings us to the close this week. Ryan, it's been great having you back just for this 90s chat.
It's been nice to be back.
It's been reminiscent of an old show, looking back at the 90s. We've tried to get to the comments, but obviously we've been on huge tangents, so we've not got to all of them. So we do apologise if we've missed any of them there. This was episode 149, which does mean that next week is our episode 150.
Woo!
150.
150. And we've got a very special guest indeed coming in for our episode 150. Not Ryan, it is the Reluctant Adult podcast. They are joining us, the pair of them are joining us for our 150th episode, which should be a lot of fun. They do a very similar kind of thing to us, so it should make for some really good chats and really good tangents, and we're just going to kind of hit go live and just see where it leads. But it'll be our
If not,
episode
it could end up
150.
in a fight to the death. So there's only one left.
I don't know how we'll fight virtually, but hopefully it'll just be a nice
If you not watch VR Troopers, Jake, there's always a way to fight virtually.
Oh,
Right?
yeah, it's very true. Very true.
Troopers, free virtual reality.
Yeah, no, we do appreciate you coming in. Obviously, it goes without saying, but you guys know where to find Ryan over on his channels. If you don't already, go and give him a follow. He's a pretty decent guy. And I'm trying to give him the same treatment we'd give any other guest. It's Ryan.
As if you haven't been my friend for the last like 17, 18 years already.
I know. But it's been very fun. It's been a lot of fun having you back, Ryan. We should do this again sometime.
Yeah, I'm up for that.
Cool. Yeah, so Sorrel, if they're watching us on catch up, what should they put in the chat?
Hashtag catch up crew.
Hashtag catch up crew. You don't have to do the fingers, but that's a very cool way of
But it helps.
But it helps. It definitely helps. Thank you very much for watching. Of course, it's been 149, episode 149 of the Geek Week with me, Jacob's Toys, the wonderful one and only Super Sorrel, and of course, our good friend Ryan Speaks Geek. Until next week, keep it geek.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and of course subscribe. Tune in next week for another live show. Until then, keep it geek. Stay up to date at www.geekweekinreview.co.uk.